Hi, I'm Javvad Malik, Security Awareness Advocate at KnowBe4, and I'm here on this webinar to discuss the phishing attack landscape and benchmarking. According to Verizon's 2019 DBIR, phishing was the #1 root cause of most breaches. Now, in many ways, that's really no surprise to anyone that's been watching the industry for any period of time, especially as technologies have got better and organizations have got better at defending and hardening their technologies against attacks. Also, when you look at attackers' ROI perspective, their return on investment, going after an organization via phishing or other social engineering attacks has a very low cost, and it can potentially yield a very high reward. So it's no real surprise. I myself, last year, I undertook a bit of research where I examined 100 threat intelligence reports. Again, it was no surprise that phishing made up for the vast majority of attacks. And when you look at social engineering as a whole, it was one of the most favored attacks by even some of the most well-funded organizations. So it's not really a surprise that attackers will use phishing to try and breach an organization. That's kind of like given. I think one of the main questions that many organizations have on their mind is, well, what does that mean to me? If I'm being phished 3 times a day, is that good? Is that bad? Who knows? So that's where benchmarking becomes really important. And to help answer that question, we published a benchmark report. And this is based on data that we've collected through the KnowBe4 platform. This data set comprised of 17,000 organizations, 4 million users, 9.5 million security tests. Out of these, 642 were large organizations which had over 1,000 employees. Just under 3,000 were mid-sized organizations with 250 to 999 employees, and 13,400 of these were small organizations which had less than 250 employees. And these were across 19 industries. And as you can see, it was a very rich data set comprising of information from organizations of all sizes and across many, many verticals. Now, to benchmark, we use something called the phish-prone percentage. What that is the overall percentage of the number of employees within your organization that are prone to click on a phishing email that comes through. And for this, there are 3 stages that we like to measure in. Phase 1 is the initial baseline. What that is where you haven't trained any of your employees on what phishing is or how to spot a phishing email, anything like that, and you send out a simulated phishing test. And you see, well, how many of your employees will actually click on a phishing link? And that gives you your baseline. So no training, no nothing, phishing out in the wild, how many of them will click? Phase 2 is where you repeat it, but after 90 days, and after you've been giving them some training. So in those 90 days, you would have run a monthly phishing test, and you would have delivered some awareness material in between to help them understand that phishing is a threat and how they can spot it and how they can report these phishing emails. So phase 3 is your final test, which is after 12 months or more, you redo the test and you see how much has your phishing baseline changed from the initial baseline that you did. So has it come down? Has it gone up? Has it stayed the same? And that will tell you how effective your awareness training plan has been. So the report broke it out by industry, but phase 1, the benchmark that went out, if you aggregate it all together, if you haven't trained any of your users and you send out a phishing email, about 37.9%, about 38% will click on that link. So that's just over a third of your employees on average. If you haven't given them any training, they will click on a phishing link. And we break the results out across all industries and all sizes. And as you'd expect, that no organization really performed well without training. Very few industries were under 30% in phish-prone. And what this shows really is the absence of training in any organization, regardless of size. You're going to have a very high percentage of your employees that are going to be susceptible to phishing attacks. Then we move on to phase 2. So after these organizations across these industries have implemented some form of security awareness and training plan for 90 days. And then we redid the baseline. And what we found is that baseline had dropped dramatically. So whereas initially there was about 38% that had clicked on it, this had dropped down to 14%. So within 90 days of the initial baseline phishing going out, you do some regular awareness training, you have some signage up, you have messages from top down, and that drops to 14%. That's a huge difference in 90 days. So that's within a quarter, you can see a massive improvement. The technology sector was probably one of the most interesting one. They had one of the highest initial rates. Their baseline was at about 55%, 56% nearly. But after 90 days, that dropped drastically to 16.8%. So a very, very big change there. And this just goes to show that even with a short but well-focused training plan, you can bring the figures down drastically. And then phase 3 was, okay, of all these organizations that stuck to it for 12 or more months, what did their baseline look like? So it started off at about 38%, then it went to 14%, and it ends up at just under 5%. After 12 months or more, most organizations, on average, it rounds up to about 5%. I mean, what this demonstrates is that regular phishing, along with awareness training, you can dramatically reduce it, and the longer you go on, the more benefits you see. It's kind of like similar to regular exercise and eating clean. If you do it for a long enough time, you will see results. It doesn't matter who you are or what you say or what kind of metabolism you have, you will see results. If you eat clean and if you work out every day, no matter how intense that both of those elements are, what you look like in day 1 and what you look like in day 90 will be different. And that's exactly the same principle at work here. If you are training your users and doing simulated phishing on a regular basis, what they look like at day 1, day 90 and day 365 will be radically different. There's no two ways really about it. Some of the success stories came from the finance, government, construction and healthcare industry. Overall, they had a 88% improvement after 12 months. Geographically speaking, we also have the data for UK and Ireland specific, because that's where I am, so I'm more interested in it. I assume most of you are also here. We have other regions in the report, which you can download from this webinar as well. Overall, the initial baseline was better in the UK and I compared to the global. So across organizations of all sizes, it was about 27%. After 90 days of training, this dropped down to just under 14%. And after 1 year, it was 4.7%, so under 5%. In the UK and I, the biggest improvement was in small businesses. They started off at about 28.7% phish-prone percentage, and after 12 months, that dropped down to 3.8%. So it started a bit higher than average and ended up a bit lower than average for the UK and I. So it just goes to show with a little bit of training and awareness, it really makes a difference. So I think it's no surprise that people are a critical layer within our security programs, but not all security awareness plans are created equal. So if you're just going to train your users by walking them through a PowerPoint at breakfast one morning once a year, that's not going to be as effective as something that's a bit more thoughtful and well crafted. And one thing to understand is that security awareness and security behavior are not the same thing. And a lot of traditional programs fail to account for this. So consider this: if I'm driving along the road and I see a sign that says 30 miles per hour limit, I'm now aware that the limit is 30 miles per hour. But just because I'm aware, does it actually translate into changed behavior? I'm not going to say that on recording, but of course it does for me, but for many others it maybe doesn't have the same effect. So similarly, if you think about security, just because we've told someone about something, we've given them the information, the raw data, does it actually translate into changed behavior? And if not, then there's something wrong in that approach, and that won't really lead to the desired outcomes. Now, in this regard, it just means understanding psychology a bit better and tailoring messages that are more appealing to individuals, and let them choose to change their behavior. So you're not forcing them to choose their behavior, you're actually giving them the choice to change their behavior. So one good example is that of recycling. When you go to throw away a bit of rubbish, you'll see there's like a couple of different bins there. So one would be the normal general waste, the landfill, the bottles, the glass, the paper, whatever, recycling, the landfill, what have you. And no one's forcing you at that time. There's no one looking over your shoulder saying, hey, you must split it out. But what it is, it's designed in a way that the architecture is very easy. They're next to each other. You're going to go throw them away anyway. So, okay, let me just split these out. And building these types of concepts, understanding the psychology and deploying training and awareness that is in line with people's psychology is a really fundamental part of an effective training program. It's also important to understand the types of phishing emails that your user will receive. There's no point if you're a UK-based company, there's little point to send them a phishing template that says Wells Fargo, because we don't have it in the UK. It'll be far more realistic to send them from a local bank saying, hey, this is the Royal Bank of Scotland, your card's going to be frozen, click here, and that's more likely to be something that users will receive, so raise their awareness around those. Also understand the tactics that the criminals are using. They're using very emotional laws. They try to appeal to people's greed or lust or fear or desires or a whole bunch of other emotions, and those are the triggers they're using to pull. So these are the things you need to make your users aware of in order to be effective in order for them to be effective in understanding what's out to get them and how to identify them correctly and early. This is a really good slide. I enjoy it. My colleague Perry Carpenter put it together. It's like plan like a marketer, test like an attacker. So you have like your phishing, automated social engineering testing, which is a regular thing that goes across the top. And then on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, that's underpinned by some other messages. So you have like executives giving messages, you have learning modules, you have newsletters, you have digital signage, you have a whole host of things underpinning it. When it's working in this supported manner, that's how the messages really stick within the minds of people. If you think back to the 80s when seatbelts were becoming mandatory, there was that don't forget to clink. And that was everywhere. It was on the radio, it was on billboards, it was on the TV, it was on posters. And by seeing it time and time again, people finally got the message, don't forget to clink. And now we're at that stage where behaviours have changed. People do get into a car and they do put on their seatbelts immediately for the most part. So if you can build out security awareness messaging that is in the same way, this week's or this month's or this quarter's message is this, and this is what we're going to fish you on, and then the execs are going to remind you, then the learning modules are going to be on that, newsletters, the digital signage, you will see a change in behavior. So in closing, I'd say that final thoughts. Humans are one of the most popular. It's the de facto choice for criminals looking to get into an organization. They'll attack the human. Simulated phishing and regular security awareness training will reduce the likelihood of people clicking on links. It will reduce it greatly. And rolling out these plans, these programs, it's not difficult. It just needs a bit of thought. And we can help, but if you can take some of the principles and apply them, you can make it work for yourself as well. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found this useful. I thought I'd try something different than just slides and hearing my voice. Maybe this made a welcome change, or maybe it didn't. Feedback is always welcome, and the link to the benchmark report should be here with it. If not, feel free to get in touch and we can get that out to you. So thank you very much, and stay secure.